What's up everybody, today we take a look at Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, released for PS4 and Xbox One by developer Respawn Entertainment. So what we have here in my opinion is a mix of all the good genres of this generation, with the most obvious being the combat, which takes its cues directly from the Soulsborne games. The combat isn't super difficult, you won't be getting one-shotted by even the smallest enemies like you would in Sekiro or Bloodborne. Fallen Order's combat is a little more forgiving as far as HP depleting after a hit, but you will still need to approach enemies carefully. Now, there will be a variety of enemies on different planets, like stormtroopers and creatures to fight against, which is to be expected from a Star Wars game, and it helps keeps the combat diverse. You're going to need to master the parrying technique. By pressing block at the very moment the enemy is about to make contact will result in a perfect parry. The enemy ends up losing his stamina, therefore creating an opening for you to finish them off, and sometimes you get treated to a finishing move cinematic, similar to Assassin's Creed, which are always awesome to watch. Other than that, the combat in the game is pretty simple, even with the medium-sized skill tree, which unlocks a few more combat moves. I didn't find the smaller skill tree to be a problem, because super large skill trees in games can be overwhelming, and keeping them manageable for one playthrough is nice. Light attacks will be your bread and butter, since heavy attacks result in a large loss of stamina and are very slow to connect. In my opinion, heavy attacks are best kept for dazed enemies. And of course, there will be push and pull force powers to incorporate into your attacks. My favorite parts of the game are the puzzles and platforming sections. They fill in spots where you aren't fighting, which is lacking in a Bloodborne or Sekiro. The platforming is similar to the kind of stuff that Obi-Wan was doing during the action scenes in the prequel Star Wars movies. If you don't remember, he would go off to planets and complete all these different missions. And just like the movies, you feel like you can take on anything, no matter how big, since you're playing as a capable Jedi. You're going to scale walls, grab onto hanging vines to go from platform to platform, and jump onto SSX type of ramps. Sometimes you're going to need to do all these one after another in order to complete the section. Or fall to your death. Nothing crazy difficult, but it's fun. Now, the game isn't totally linear, there's some side exploration, but it's probably the game's weakest aspect. You get the chance to just explore if you wanted to, similar to God of War, but you don't really gain any noteworthy upgrades when going out of your way into a secret path.
Better catch up. Get it, buddy. Come on, buddy. Let's take a look.
You discover some new ponchos, or skins for your robot or ship, and the occasional upgrade to health and force gauges, which is useful, but not anything that made you feel like the game rewarded you enough for straying off the path for 20 minutes. Oh, and you do find different cosmetic parts for your lightsaber grip, but you barely even see your lightsaber grip for this to even be worth it. I stopped upgrading my lightsaber after a while since it didn't make my lightsaber stronger in any way, but I get they kept it that way for balancing purposes. You're not able to 100% explore planets on your first visit. You'll need to bounce between planets for story purposes or personal reasons if you want to find everything that planet has to offer. Certain sections of that planet are sectioned off. You'll need to obtain a certain power-up and return with it to continue along that section. Very similar to a Metroid or Zelda game. And boss battles don't disappoint either. Some will take place on large set pieces going from location to location, and others will be against super intimidating characters. I don't want to spoil any boss battle characters, but a certain Wanderer was my favorite boss encounter, as it was difficult and forced you to evolve your fighting technique with precise parrying, patience, and managing both enemy and your own stamina bars. After that fight, I was able to take on the rest of the game with confidence.
Your life is forfeit. Jedi. Just Jedi. You cannot escape. I will make you suffer. Traitor.
We've got them on the run! Keep pushing!
The graphics were impressive. I don't think I've ever seen the Star Wars universe this detailed before. The high-res textures on buildings and floor surfaces blend together nicely. I'm a sucker for shiny reflective areas, so of course planet Zephos was my favorite planet to be on, with its icy platformer areas and the galactic empire structures that you can tell were built into the once completely natural planet. Water rendering is done well, but nothing super impressive. The more overgrown environments are rich with detail and everything has a nice lived-in look to it most of the time. You won't get bored of one particular color palette either, since each planet will have its own style. For example, the very red planet Dathomir, which at first was intimidating, has a rough, very dusty terrain which adds a certain edge to it, which makes sense because some of the strongest enemies are located here. At the time of this review, there are a few issues with performance, like the momentary freezing of the game if you rush into a new area that the game hasn't loaded yet, but I heard they are working on fixes for those issues with future patches. The motion capture also felt off to me at times, feeling a little janky. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order's story starts off on a high note and also ends on a high note. You play as Cal Kestis, a Jedi who was living a life on a scrapyard planet when he gets discovered by the Empire there and is now on the run from them with the help of his newfound mentor, Seer Junda. Seer takes Cal to a vault on planet Bogano where he finds out about a list containing names of Jedi-sensitive children inside of a holocron. But before he can obtain the list to help the cause, he must find and access all 3 vaults as sort of a test. And that's where you find yourself planet hopping and meeting new enemies while learning of everyone's backstory, including your own, which I will not spoil. But I will say it is worth the wait, since it does happen at one of the final acts of the story. There you have it. That's my review of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to stay locked into future videos.